Okay. Well, welcome to the Cost of Being Seen, which is going to be a fun workshop and group coaching sesh all about fear of visibility and marketing. So we're gonna go deep, get into it. I just wanted to set the stage a little bit. You know yourself better than me, but you might want something that kind of brings you into your body and some calming. If we go to some places that start feeling a little bit uncomfortable, for me, it's scent. So I have my like little forest scent essential oils tube. But if you want a moment before we get into the material to grab something similar for yourself or just have a plan for what it is, if you need it, go ahead and do that now. So the first thing I'd like to start with is we're going to do a little activity, and you can either share it in the chat or share it with the group or in like your own notebook or wherever you're writing. I want to start first with talking about authenticity in marketing, which is a huge buzzword right now. And I'd love to take our own pulse, like what does that mean to us? So the question is to drop in the chat or wherever you're taking notes. What does it mean to be authentic in marketing? The snuffling you're hearing is my puppy. Anyone brave enough to share? What does authenticity in marketing mean?
I'll go if nobody else feels like talking.
Yeah, go for it.
Two things that came to mind for me. One is the use of language in marketing. I'm really aware of the levels of language, whether it's conversational, professional, corporate. And as soon as I start seeing that kind of corporate stink on a marketing uh, plan or communication, I'm always like, I'm out. You're not a person. You're not talking to me as a person. And the other thing that I was thinking about was recently there was a dust up in the nail polish community because a company didn't take a stand on a social issue. Or they said, I personally have a stand, but my company doesn't have a stand because we want to market to everybody. And I was like, and I will no longer take part in your products. Thank you. You know, so I feel like being true to your personal values is really important, and communicating those personal values are important.
Yeah, so I love those examples because I think like when people hear marketing or advertising and have that like feeling, we have this idea of kind of like a shiny, glossy veneer, which is like literally a barrier between you and the real thing, right? Um, Okay, so next question I'd love for you to either journal or drop in the chat is, so why do we need less barriers between the real thing and the people we're trying to connect with in marketing? So why is it important to be authentic in your marketing, especially if you have a personal brand? Go ahead and take a minute to either drop that in the chat or journal on it a little bit, and then we'll check in. Anyone want to be brave and share?
I don't mind saying just a little bit because I've been thinking actually about this for a little bit. um, and honestly, I think when it comes down to the authenticity piece of things, I think it's important to showcase who you are in that raw, authentic way, because you never know how many people you actually are going to resonate with. Like Katie said, like that corporate language, I don't resonate with that. I don't want anything to do with that. I love that personal touch to brands and to products and to services. Um, so yeah, I just don't think you ever know how people are going to resonate. So it's always best to come from that authentic place.
Yeah. And I think also with that, sorry, is it Kate or Katie? Kate?
Kate, thanks
Kate.
for asking.
Yeah. I think like with your other example about like the values in the nail salon, or the nail company, that was like a very normal attitude in business for such a long time in so many fields. But what's weird is though, like if you don't know a brand's values, do you know the brand? It's kind of hard to like get your mind around something like what it is, what contains it, what is it not, if you don't know, if they don't make their identity or stance clear. And from the brand's perspective, they're like, well, we don't want to do that because if we identify that, then some people will go away. So that is kind of the trade-off. You can appeal to everybody or try to appeal to everybody. You can try. You're still going to lose people if you do that. Or you can like have a very clear, solid brand identity. And you can also lose people that way and get people that are really for you because they are about what you're about, right? Okay. So, are all of us business owners or thinking about being business owners, selling stuff? Okay, cool. All right, next question. I want you to do your Zoom react for about whether you feel like you're currently being authentic in marketing. So you can do the little party popper if you're like, yeah, woohoo all the time, a little heart for most of the time, sometimes cry, react, and no is the wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, right? It's vulnerable. It feels vulnerable. Okay. And then why not? Let me give you a minute to either drop that in the chat or journal on it a little bit. All right. Would anyone like to talk about where they're at with authenticity in marketing? Why or why not that's happening right now?
For me, I haven't actually gotten off the ground yet. I'm still very much thinking about my business and what I want it to be. And so right now, the only outgoing communication I have regarding anything near to my business is on LinkedIn, which is like the death of authenticity right now.
Yeah.
So I feel like once I actually get the LLC and the business name, then I can wipe my LinkedIn and be like, and now here's the real me. Haha. I still feel like probably if I'm going to be cross promoting on LinkedIn, there will probably be a LinkedIn filter on what I say. But right now, that's what's holding me back. Like, A, I don't have a business yet. And B, my platform stinks.
Well, let's just like pause there. Isn't it weird that on LinkedIn, that is a professional community where a lot of marketers hang out? It's not very authentic at all. We don't have many examples of people being authentic or vulnerable. Like, can we just pause there and be like, that's pretty weird, right?
Thank God.
It
I thought it
is.
was just me. Oh, thank God.
No, I've been on LinkedIn for a while for different businesses and places that I've worked for, and it is atrocious. It really is. It's audacious, and um, it's being used more of like a venting personal platform, and it's very political on there. It's really strange. So yeah, LinkedIn has its benefits and can gift you quite a few clients in a weird way. But yeah, I second that, Kate.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone in that. And then it's actually, I think it's true for most of our social platforms. Like Instagram, you can find it, but you can find a lot of not very authentic stuff. Like people are showing us it's really hard to show up without that veneer, like that
Mhm.
fear and lacquer. So if you are struggling, I don't think anyone put like, yes, I'm authentic all the time in my marketing as a reaction. Yeah, because that's kind of like superhero level marketing to get to
Mhm.
that place where you feel like you're authentic all of the time. But I know you all have it in you to be superheroes. So let's get into some of this teaching. Okay. And for this, I'm still getting used to like how Canva does this thing. So
Oh
you
yeah.
unmute. Um, are like my little video screens blocking the words for y'all? Okay, cool. So you might just have to unmute and interrupt me if you have questions when I'm in full screen like this. Okay, cool. So why do we care about authenticity in marketing? Like, why does it matter? If you've been like studying up on business, if you are in marketing yourself, you've probably heard that thing that unless it's like an impulse buy candy bar where it doesn't really matter if you make the wrong choice, people tend to feel safer investing in brands that they know, like, and trust. So even with a candy bar, like I might be more inclined to go with a Snickers because I know what to expect. I know what's in a Snickers than some like sort of off brand I've never seen before because I don't have that know, like, and trust. And especially if I'm going to invest in coaching, if I'm going to invest thousands of dollars, hours and hours and hours of my life, intimacy with a person, or if any sort of service provider that's going to be working with me close and personally, I'm going to have to disclose some personal information about myself. It's really important that if I'm making any sort of significant investment in time, emotion, not just money, but money too, that I know, like, and trust and have a sense of what I can expect from this provider. So if you are your brand, if you are a personal brand, are y'all personal brands? Yeah, okay. Then your people have to know, like, and trust you. So if we use like a dating analogy, I think how a lot of people who are struggling to get the kind of customers, the kind of following, the kind of success that they want from their marketing, they're showing up as if they're like their Hinge or Bumble profile. And they're not getting any deeper than that. So they're like, here's my best foot forward, and that's it. And then they're like, why am I not having significant relationships with an audience or with customers? And it's like, well, you're not giving them the opportunity. You're staying at the level of this is what I let people see when they first meet me. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. But like we were just mentioning, when we see lots of examples of brands not being authentic, the reason is because authenticity requires vulnerability. And if you know Brene Brown, she talks about this a lot. So I've just got this little quote from her that to be authentic, we must cultivate the courage to be imperfect and vulnerable. So I love that she has right in there the word imperfect, because I think that especially for my people that tend to be attracted to my work, a lot of us are perfectionists or recovering perfectionists. Like we learned that to get what we wanted out of the world, out of our professional lives, we couldn't show up with any visible flaws. So it makes perfect sense that now that we are our own brands and we have to show up and figure out how to do this vulnerability thing, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance because we're like, there's a few women of color in here. Maybe some of you are queer, but if you grew up in a school system or worked in a corporate system where that being to you could get you into trouble, in like not just emotional trouble, it could get you in financial trouble, it could get you fired. Now you had to learn how to be safe in these systems where you had to turn off your authenticity. So I hope you're bringing self-compassion. If you're like, now it's really hard that I might have my own business and I'm supposed to be authentic. Now it's really hard and it feels like crap and really scary to show up fully authentic. Makes absolute sense. Okay. So being authentic in marketing right now as your own business is kind of like going out completely solo on a stage with that one spotlight with a crowded audience and just being like, go, gotta sing a cappella. Like there's no group to blend into. There's no backups to share the spotlight. There's no one to compare you to. There's no one to follow in the footsteps. You are out there blazing your own trail, going first, because no one is showing you how to be you, because no one knows how to be you better than you. So, how does that feel? For most people, it's freaking scary. Okay? Like that's terrifying. That's people's worst nightmare. So if that's how it feels to you, of course it does. You're not alone. But I'm not just gonna end of presentation. Goodbye. It's just scary. Have a good day. No, we're gonna make this better. Don't worry. Okay, but first, I want to check in with our bodies. So one of my tools I like, because maybe you're feeling this yourself, if we're talking about authenticity and marketing and all the reasons why it's hard, you might be noticing some tension. For me, I get the tension in my throat and in my chest. And I really like bringing my body on board when I want to be authentic in my marketing. So here's one of my little tricks. It's called a 4-7-8 breath, where we're going to breathe in, suck in air for a count of 4. Then we're going to hold it for a count of 7. And then we're going to take a nice deep exhale for a count of 8. And we're going to do it 4 times. So I'll count you off for the first one, and then you can go at your pace for the next few, and then we'll keep going. So breathe in all the way in to your belly button for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're going to hold at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and breathe out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we're going to do that pattern 3 more times at your own pace. Okay. Okay, you can shake it out, get the tension. How are you feeling? We ready to keep moving? Okay, cool. All right, so let's do our next journal or drop in the chat question, which is let's get really honest. What scares you the most about being visible in your marketing? Like, what's the fear story going on? What are you afraid would or could happen? Yeah, totally. Being judged is a big one for people, and not being seen as like qualified or expert enough to do that. That's definitely one I hear a lot from my clients. Anyone else want to share any that came up for you?
In previous iterations of my life, I was trying to market myself as a dancer, and I just hated putting it out there and nobody caring.
Yeah,
No reaction, no response. Or people would say, "Oh, yeah, I really want to go to your show, but it's not free, or it's too late, or I'm too busy, or..." And after a while, it's kind of like, well, I'm just going to dance for myself then. You don't need to know about it because it's not important to you.
totally.
I
I'm
second
sorry,
that. Like, oh no, you go first because I already talked.
okay, thank you. Other than it being enough, which you've already previously touched on, for me, it's, to put it simply, like attracting weirdos. I know that sounds weird, but like attracting people that, because you're visible, and then some people not liking what you do and then harassing you for that, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Johoska, were you going to add something as well?
Yeah, I was, excuse me, I was going to add to Kate, and part of that is like, yeah, when you put it out there and not fixating on the views and the likes. And it's like, I've had this up for 10 hours. Why is no one even saying anything? Why isn't even giving me that little heart? You don't even have to put effort into it, and you ain't even pushing that damn heart. Like, what the fuck? I like your shit. You're not liking mine. It's cyclical. It's just like nonstop. So yes, I
Absolutely.
second that. And Amanda, I feel you with the weirdos just coming out of the woodworks, because I feel that happens on a regular basis just with my own personal stuff. And it just brings the trolls out.
100%. Well, y'all did a great job of feeding into this next slide. So when I figured this out, this kind of blew my mind a little bit. It sounds simple. Maybe you already put this together, but this totally blew my mind. I realized what I was afraid of was not that I was visible or that I was being seen. It was what other people would do when they saw me. So, some really common fears I work through with my clients as marketing confidence cheerleader is the fear of being called out. Like, what if I make a mistake in public and people are pissed? Like, what if? What if I make a mistake, like I show I'm a beginner, or I don't know everything, or I say the wrong thing, and then people judge me, or then people reject me? And then what if I get trolled or harassed or negatively reviewed? Then what? Then what? These are really big fears for my people. Which makes sense. Because that's you've probably had experiences, maybe not exactly like this, but you probably have had experiences where you felt those feelings of fear or rejection. And you remember that in your body and you're like, that's not comfortable. I don't want to feel like that. Which makes sense. So it makes sense then if when I say be authentic, be visible, put yourself out there, if your primary associations of being visible are your biggest, scariest fears, like the first thing you think of when you think of putting marketing up there is that list. Like, what if I'm judged? What if I'm rejected? What if I'm trolled? Then it makes sense that your unconscious systems are preventing you from showing up authentically in your marketing, right? Because when we're scared or in a state of fear, our autonomic bodily processes start taking over to get us out of harm's way. They want us to get us out of the perceived danger. So if we're like, my number one association with being visible as myself is I'm going to get punished somehow, it makes total sense that you're having writer's block, or you show up on video in your marketing and you don't know what to say. Or you're like, I just need to grab someone else's template so then it's not so vulnerable, right? So here's how it might look if your primary associations with being visible as yourself are not good. It can look like ghosting on your marketing, just not showing up at all, not being consistent. It can show up as masking, like what we were just talking about, like what we see on LinkedIn and Instagram a lot. Like we only get to see the shiny veneer. We only get to see like the Bumble profile version of you. It can look like copycatting. I just want to do what someone else did to make their business successful. It can look like I just got to grab another 10-step template or take another 10-step class to hopefully replicate this other person's results for their business. It can look like only making moves if your coach, your mentor, your teacher, or your faith influencer told you you should. So like getting that external permission, because then it's like, oh, okay, someone else told me to. I'm not out here on this stage singing a cappella by myself, right? I am curious. I know we're in a vulnerable place, so of course, like you don't have to share unless you're comfortable, but I'm really curious, which of these do you recognize that you've done? Has anyone done any of these? I have. I think I've done all of them. Yeah, okay. Gotcha.
I think some of it also goes back to Isa is the whole perfection thing, because I'm not a believer in perfection because I come from a place of, and this might sound awful, but perfection will kill your profits at the end of the day. So I veer away from that. And because I don't want to be a perfectionist and spend too much time on one thing, I start using the templates. I start using like the very standardized things just so I can get things done. So I'm guilty of that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, my go-to is definitely the masking. Like I'm only going to show you the best, most shiniest, most made up parts of myself. And then Amanda said not showing up and masking. So yeah, it makes sense if you're doing this. And one thing I like to remind people is if you're doing this, it's because the unconscious parts of your mind and your body love you. They're like, she thinks this is dangerous, let's protect her, which is like sweet. But now that we like know that's what's going on, let's see if we can maybe choose a different way to show up. Because unfortunately, when that is how you're approaching your marketing, you don't tend to get results like building an incredibly aligned, beautiful community who's hyped and ready for whatever you have on offer, which is, that sounds nice, right? That sounds like we can make sales easier, right? Okay. If we're showing up the way we just talked about, like masked and disguised, it's hard to have sales and business goals unlocked because we're not giving people an opportunity to know, like, and trust us / our brand. It's hard to build a following, shares, and recognition because instead of owning that spotlight and like rocking out in that a cappella stage, we're still trying to blend into the background and do what other people did. So like, what are people following from us? If we're trying to be someone else, they should follow the other person, right? We need to give them a reason to follow us, to share what we're saying, to recognize us and our unique, only 1 in 7.1 billion or whatever the population is, voice that we each own. And if we're showing up like that in marketing, like if you just do a check-in with your body when you show up not as yourself or like in the professionalism or perfectionism veneer, like how does your body feel? Like mine feels a little like punchy. like I'm kind of like protecting my like squishy bits. But what if your marketing felt like literally just throw your arms open, like do a Beyonce pose right now? Like what if it felt like that? Yeah, what if showing up for marketing felt like that? Like, did anybody else get an instant like, ooh, I feel better? Like I feel bigger and more powerful. Like, what if you could show up like that in your marketing? Like, imagine how things would be different that way. So in other words, right now, if your marketing isn't doing what you want it to do, if it's not getting the results you want, and your primary associations with it is that fear, that rejection, that punishment, you might be currently protecting yourself from getting what you want from your business. Because what a lot of us want from our businesses require the participation of other people. Like you can't make sales without involving other people. You can't make sales without letting other people see you. You can't like build a following, build an audience, get that connection, build a community if you don't let other people see you. So that was a lot. I just kicked my own ass with that. So we're going to take a little body break. Or just shake. You can shake however you want, just be your head, or you can do like a full body shake. We're just going to shake it off. Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you for shaking with me. This is what marketing confidence cheerleading is like, by the way. Okay. So next thing I want to check in with y'all about is, can you list some stuff that you really, really want that would require you to be seen by other people? And it can be in your business, it can be in your personal life. I just want you to start listing, like think of a good place to start is your business goals. What's something you really want for your business? And does it require other people to see you? Go ahead and journal that or drop it in the chat. Would anyone like to share what came up for them? What's something you really want that would require someone else to see you?
I'll go. Mine's pretty straightforward and it's business related. I think if for me, for my service, I just want to be able to service the community, especially the BIPOC community here in Portland. And the whole purpose is to provide my service at an affordable price as well. Because just to let you guys know, I do braiding, if this makes any sense. I do box braids, knotless, stitch braids, you name it, I can do it. But the braiding business has gotten, the audacity behind the prices is ridiculous, you know? And so I want to be able to bring that to the community and also be a place of respite if like people need like that break, you know, healing energy and just that time. But in order for that to happen, I need to be witnessed by others in my authentic self, in like that raw form, and people understand that I can provide this to you and be confident in that.
Yeah, yeah. For it to be accessible, people have to know it's available, right?
And I'm
Yeah,
great doing that in person, but ask me to do that on the internet, it's terrifying.
yeah.
I can talk about this with you in person till the sun goes down. But to actually post something online, oh, no, thank you.
Gotcha. Anyone else want to share what came up for them thinking about this? I mean, I want money. I want sales, you know. Okay, awesome. Let's keep trucking then. I'm gonna shout out a few that a lot of us want, just in general, in business and in life. Love, connection, relationship, community, recognition, praise, support, validation, celebration. This is all really good stuff, right? And all stuff you kind of have to be seen by other people to get. So I want to blow your mind a little bit. Remember how we talked about what your primary associations with being seen right now are? It's like punishment, rejection, shame spiral. What if these were your primary associations with being seen? Like, I just want you to breathe into that for a second. What if those could be your primary associations with being seen? It's a different flavor, right? It's a horse of a different color. Okay, so how do we make that happen? Because we've got some deep conditioning, we've got some deep mental pathways that formed our punishment, being seen as ourselves equals punishment associations. So how can we start associating visibility with those things we want, not just the things we're afraid of? And surprise, it's shadow work. It's always shadow work. We have to dig into the shadow. So first, I think that what a lot of our fear of visibility really is shame. So at some point in our lives, we were seen as ourselves and we were punished for it. The people who saw us didn't react well. And most of us had some sort of situation or condition where we had to learn how to live with that. Like maybe it was your family of origin, maybe it was your school, maybe it was your work. It was a situation you couldn't escape at the time. So you had to be like, it's not safe to show myself, so I have to find some way around that. And if you're a little kid and you learn that's the case, instead of being like, well, this world is fucked. My parents are fucked up. My teachers are fucked up. The system's fucked up. We're all screwed. It is often cognitively easier to be like, well, I'm wrong. Everything around me isn't wrong. I'm wrong. So I need to bury these parts of myself that I'm being punished for. And you kind of had to do that to survive these situations and circumstances you were in. So it makes perfect sense. You're not broken. Nothing went wrong. It makes sense why this happened. So now you're your own boss. You have your own business. You get to choose, is that still how you want to be in the world? And I'm not saying that to minimize this shift. It's a big shift. So let's talk a little bit about it. You're seen in your marketing as yourself. You have the courage, you have the grace, you have the generosity to show up as yourself authentically in your marketing. And people react badly. The number one thing I want you to realize is the people who react badly to you showing up authentically in your marketing are not your people. They're not your audience. They're not your customers, and you can let them the fuck go. I'm sorry, I swear a lot. So they're not your people. You don't have to worry about them. What you can do to protect yourself is have really good boundaries. You can give yourself permission to block people who are shitty when they see your marketing. You can have things like rules of engagement. Like if you have a favorite social media platform, like a few who do this is that I really like is there's Consent Wizardry on Instagram, and they have like these pinned rules of engagement. Like here's what you need to qualify for before you can comment. Here's what will get you blocked. Here are how I expect you to treat each other in the comment sections. Like if that is something that makes you feel safer and more able to show up in your marketing, take these, steal them. You get to have boundaries for how people treat you in your spaces. Next, let's talk about institution, society, culture. A lot of what's responsible for our shame, depending on how many marginalized identities we hold. So here's the thing. You had to hide yourself and not be authentic to get buy-in systems that didn't share your values. So what's the antidote for that when you are building your community, when you're building who gets to partake in your work? As number one, you get clear on what are your values? What are the values we all need to have in common so that we don't have to hide our authentic selves? So I know you've probably, if you've done any business research, you're like, I'm supposed to have a mission statement, supposed to have a vision, supposed to have values, I'm supposed to know my ideal customers. And yes, but not for the dumb reasons they're telling you, like, well, this will make you optimize your blah, 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 and 4x your ROI. No, you got to know that stuff so you know who are your people and who aren't your people. Does that make sense? Okay. Like, who are we worried about and who are we just gently letting go? Okay. Now let's get into something juicy. I think this is the question that gets so much gold when I ask it of myself and when I ask it of my clients. What part of the shame that you are associating with visibility is coming from you? Here's what I mean by that. I'm not saying it's your fault. Here's what I mean by that. I'm going to tell a little personal anecdote. Okay, so I'm going to do a little overshare. I went on a date recently where there was a really big boundary violation. And it was a boundary violation that had happened to me before. And when it happened to me before, it sent me into a really dark place in like my mental, emotional health. So this time when it happened, I was like having a reaction and I went and skated on the beach because that's how one processes things. And I was like, okay, so what am I feeling? Like, because I didn't have tools to check in with like really what's going on with me at the time when this happened to me before. And I was like, I'm afraid. And I'm like, okay, well, what am I afraid of? I'm never going to see this guy again. He's blocked. And I was like, I'm afraid that I'm going to blame myself for that violation like I did last time. I'm afraid I'm going to spiral over all the things I should have done differently so he wouldn't have violated my boundaries. And I was like, that's interesting because I don't think I asked him to violate my boundaries. And so what I realized is what I was most afraid of when this fool overstepped and violated my boundaries was how I was going to treat myself in the aftermath. Does that make sense? My biggest fear for the biggest pain is what I was going to make someone else reacting badly to me mean about me. That was the biggest pain. That was what I was most afraid of. So, and I think this happens in business too. Like if you've ever gotten a negative comment, if someone ever questioned your prices, is the pain that you're afraid they're going to do that again? Or is it the pain mostly what you're going to afraid about what you're going to make that mean about you? So I'm going to do a little activity here. Think of a time, it doesn't have to be in business, but it can be. Think of the last time you got a negative reaction from someone else. How did you treat yourself in that situation? And you can go ahead and journal this or drop it in the chat. And I would love to share because I think like seeing that other people experience this too can go such a long way. Such a long way for not feeling lonely out there on the stage in the spotlight all by yourself. So yeah, go ahead and take a minute to think about that. Drop it in the chatter journal a little bit. Is anyone willing to share who came up for you?
Well, Issa, you were with me last time I dealt with this. You were kind enough to support me when this happened. But for the folks who weren't in the room when this happened, and it wasn't even a negative reaction per se, but I am medically high risk, and so I am taking COVID precautions seriously still. And I had a friend of mine question whether that was really necessary and basically make me feel like I was overreacting and that my boundaries were unreasonable. Side note, she caught COVID 4 weeks later. But it sent me into a spiral. Like, it sent me into like, oh my God, am I wrong? Like, have I completely based my value system on an incorrect assumption of my own safety and self-worth? The hell? No, I didn't. No, but you know, for a good couple of weeks, I was like, you know, and I had to reach out to other people in the disabled community to be like, tell me I'm right? Question mark. And luckily people were generous enough to be able to do that for me. But it sent me into a spiral for weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to point out like something I'd like to highlight in both my story and Kate's story is our immediate tendency to be like, what if I could have done something to prevent this from happening? Like, what if I could do that? And I had this realization recently that kind of blew my mind. And I was like, I know a lot of people go right to there. Like, what could I have done to prevent this bad thing from happening? And I was like, it's weird because then we take on so much responsibility for shit that isn't ours. Like, I didn't violate my own boundaries. I didn't endanger Kate, you didn't endanger your own health, you know? So like, why do we do that? And I was like, in a weird way, I think it makes a lot of people feel safer to think there is if I could do everything perfectly, that wouldn't have happened, which means I could control whether bad things happen to me. Right? So hold that thought. We're going to talk more about that in a second. Okay, next question. You can do the little hand raise emoji, or if you're on video, raise your hand. How many of you thought through all of the ways you could have prevented that negative thing from happening to you? How many of you spiraled about that? Yeah. Okay. Yes, same. Okay. And we were spiraling. It went on for a while. We thought through every angle. Okay. Yeah, that's real. Me too. So, in a weird way, this shame, which is what we are really talking about right now, is it's my responsibility that someone did something that hurt me. In a weird way, that lets us avoid uncertainty. Because if it's my fault that someone hurt me, then I could probably have done something differently so it wouldn't have been hurt, which means I can control other people's reactions. Right? It makes sense if we're scared of uncertainty, why we might choose shame. We might choose to blame ourselves to avoid accepting, believing that we actually don't control other people's reactions. Because if we do not control and we are not responsible for what other people do when they see us, we don't know what's going to happen next. We live in uncertainty. Our world is uncertain. And a lot of people do not know how to make peace with that. So you kind of get to choose, which version do you want to live in? Do you want everything to be your fault so you can control it? Or do you want to not take responsibility for other people's reactions and embrace uncertainty? There isn't a right answer, by the way. This is a choice you get to make for you. And I just want to highlight, this is scary, right? Like, controllable, we're more comfortable with that. We're taught to be more comfortable with what's controllable. So it makes sense. I am choosing uncertainty, to be honest. And it's really having to rewire a lot of my brain paths and thought habits and ways of being in the world. And a big one here when we're talking about visibility and marketing and this, do we want to choose shame? Do we want to lean into shame to feel like we could control how other people will react to us? One thing that made it easier is deciding how I will hold myself when other people do react to my marketing in a way that hurts. So I'm trying to consciously decide the next time in my personal life or in business, if someone violates my boundaries, if someone says something mean, how will I hold myself through that? And so I mentioned with this example I gave you of a boundary violation on a date that it had happened before, and it was real bad for me last time. Really went into a bad mental health place. This time that didn't happen. This time that did not happen. Like, it still hurt. It didn't feel good. It was still scary. But like, I lost all the, if I just done this, this wouldn't happen. If I just done this, this wouldn't have happened to me. If I just been more perfect, this wouldn't have happened to me. And like, it cut my spiral short. And isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? That the difference wasn't that I prevented this boundary violation from happening to me again. The difference was how I treated myself when that had happened to me. Okay. So here's another question for you. What if it is possible for you to get from being authentically visible to the right people was worth the risk of being visible to the wrong people? What if? And I'm just going to remind you of a few of the things we said that are also possible from being authentically visible as you. Love, connection, abundance, all those sales we all want, financial freedom, creation, co-creation, some awesome collabs, healing, social justice, furthering our social justice values in the world through our business. Throw some more in the chat. Like, what are some other things that are possible from being seen as you? Or some I missed? Validation, acceptance. Yeah. There's some really good stuff that could come from being visible. Like, what if that's worth the risk of being rejected sometimes? Of having people react in a mean way sometimes? What if it's worth the risk? Community, that's huge. Having a community where you feel safe to be you, absolutely, Jehovska. So again, this is a personal choice. Is this side of the list of what's possible from being authentic and visible in your marketing? Is this worth the risk of the other things that are possible from being visible? Again, there's no right answer. You know you better than me. But you get to, since we're conscious of this now, you get to decide, is it worth the risk to you? And here's another thing that kind of blew my mind. What if you could actually heal your trust and visibility wounds through your marketing? What if you were brave and generous enough to let people see authentic you in your marketing, which gave the right people the opportunity to show up for you, to validate you, to love you on you, to make you feel safe being seen as you? What if that's the opportunity being authentic in your marketing gave you? Like, you could literally heal this shit through it. So again, it's a choice. Is that possibility worth the risk of the negative stuff that can happen? And you got to choose for you. Okay. So I also want you to think of your favorite clients. So I have a sense of all of you in here. I know we all care about like other clients that have marginalized identity and have been punished for being themselves in community and society for a really long time. I want you to think of the impact it would have on your people to see you owning authentic you in your marketing. Which of these two scenarios do you think would be more powerful, more impactful, more hope-giving, more healing, and more inviting for them to see from you? So option number one, they only get to see a perfect version of you who does not and has never ever struggled with this circumstance and the resulting shame. That's option one. Option two, that you too, an expert, a mentor, someone they look up to, an authority, a badass bitch, has the same shame struggle, that they have. And how despite having that same struggle with shame about the exact same shame, you're still showing up and being amazing in public and cool things are happening because of it. And how you were brave enough to look at this shame and now you have tools for how to deal with it. So for all the people that are coming after you, the path is going to be easier for them because of your courage. And how also your healing is imperfect. It wasn't like you flipped a switch and the shame went away. It's not like you flipped a switch and you were instantly healed. Like, what happens today when that same shame comes up? How do you deal with it now? How do you love yourself through that shame struggle? Okay. Tell me whether you think which would have a more positive impact on your clients, on your people to see from you, option one or option two. Right? Yeah, two, for sure. There is a right answer for this one, by the way. Okay. I'm just gonna overshare again. Here are some shameful things I've shared in my literal business marketing that increased my sales. How my chronic illness often makes me really late on deliverables and how I had a hard time communicating that at first. Recently, nearly being homeless and having to ask for help from my community and then getting like 10 times more than I ever thought was possible. The month I announced I was worried I was going to be homeless, I had my best sales month ever. Just FYI. I have a podcast about this one time I mistook a panic attack for a crush and what it has to do with marketing. You should listen to it. It's good. I was really nervous to share that one, and I got 3 sales out of it. Not like little ones either. Here's one that was really embarrassing. I've been doing a live series on my money dirt, like kind of digging into my shame around money and where that comes from. And I talked about being that intern, you know, the one back in the day who had, I used to think it was an affair, but now I understand it was being preyed upon by a much older boss. How's that for professional? Like, look at that list and be like, is this a professional list? And I want you to know, sharing this stuff made me a lot of money. And there's a caveat here. You don't owe anyone your story. You really don't. You have every right to privacy for whatever you want to keep in your personal, not your public life. But I hope that when you're deciding what is relevant, what is important to share, and what is important and good for you to keep private, that the deciding factor isn't shame. That's my one thing that I hope. So I'm not going to judge you for keeping whatever you want to keep private. I just hope your deciding factor isn't shame. Okay. Woo! Okay, so I'm going to give you a really quick 30-second pitch and then we'll go into general Q&A, okay? You made it through, everybody. Thank you for doing the shadow work with me. We did some work today. So anyway, bet you didn't think you were going to a marketing workshop where we're going to go that deep on shame. But here's the thing. So my favorite service I offer is marketing confidence cheerleading, which is basically like a hybrid between a marketing consultant, like, yeah, we'll write your copy, we'll figure out your channels and how often to post and what to say, blah, blah, blah. So we can do all that. And we do all that. But we also talk about the emotional stuff that's coming up that makes it hard for people to show up in their marketing at all and makes it hard for them to show up authentically. And the thing we usually wind up talking the most about is the stuff that was in this workshop, the shame that comes up, our shame wounds. And especially if we developed those shame wounds because we were continuously punished for being ourselves. You know that saying, how relationships are mirrors? You didn't have an accurate reflection of yourself. You had a funhouse mirror and you think that's what you look like now. So I can't tell you how much it changes everything to have mirrors that don't distort you back to you. That mirrors that show you how beautiful, how valuable, how much you have to offer. That's the reflection you get back to you. And often for people where they're getting a funhouse mirror reflected back to them in so many aspects of their life, a therapist, someone else that's a really skilled gentle space holder might be the first time they're seeing themselves reflected back clearly to themselves. And having that reinforced over and over again makes it easy to accept, I'm actually awesome. I'm actually awesome at what I do. My business actually really deserves to succeed. My people actually are really benefited by me. So that's a lot of what we do in our sessions. So this program, 3 months, well, give or take, because we usually have to take breaks for holidays and time off and whatnot. Hour long each time. You get unlimited copy editing because that's my marketing specialty. I'm a messaging storytelling wizard, so help you with your copy. You get digital copies of marketing confidence cheerleading workbooks, which are like guided journals to support you through this journey. You get surprise presents and snail mail from me to hype you up. And you get a private community where you can ask me questions in between sessions. So you're never feeling alone in your journey. And I have a super crazy sale where it's literally more than $1,000 off if you check out by midnight this Friday. And then for the rest of the month, it's 25% off, which is still hundreds of dollars of savings. So yeah, just want you to know, if you need a cheerleader, you need me in your life to hype you up and vanquish your shame stories, then I am here. I'm available. at a really big discount for 3 more days. Well, it's still a big discount for the rest of the month, but it's a super big discount through Friday. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's get into some coaching. So you are welcome to ask me questions about what we just covered or just stuff that's going on in your marketing right now. Yeah, about 22 minutes. What would you like some help with? Or we can just process. You're like, this thing brought some stuff up for me. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Yeah. Love to hear some shares. What's come up for you?
I have like a whole backpack of stuff to take to my therapist next week.
You're welcome.
So thank you for that, because shit was getting boring. No, it's really interesting because my business is going to be grief education and support. And the reason I launched into this journey is because I showed up in my grief authentically at my job and got fired. And realized that I can't deal with corporate masking anymore. I've never been good at it, and especially not when I was that hurt, right? I didn't have the spoons to do it, and they were like, and thank you and goodbye. And I realized the only way I'm going to be able to function in society is I got to work for myself. And also realizing like grief is huge and nobody's talking about it, and this support is really necessary in the community, especially people who are like queer informed and trans informed and BIPOC informed and trauma informed. But that all relates to the reason I was grieving is because my mom died. And guess who gave me all of the image and shame issues? Oh shit. So I gotta unpack some stuff.
That's so real. And I think also when we start digging into shame like this and finding out how much of it was not ours to begin with, and then how we had to internalize it to like make it through. Oh boy, that brings up grief. Oh boy, does that bring up grief.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is going to be a day of sitting and drinking tea and journaling and crying and hey, thanks for that.
You're very welcome. I'm the cheerleader that makes you cry.
Gotta do it though, right? Gotta do it because fear is holding me back. Fear of what?
Right?
You know, like judgment from a dead person?
Yeah. Yeah, I think also like what's interesting, and I don't know, I'm curious if any of you noticed how your body was doing during this workshop, but when I started like digging into this, I literally felt things leaving my body. Like I have this spot on like right there that was really, really tight. And then when I went and did my skate, when I was like, oh, I'm actually not afraid of this guy anymore. I'm afraid of how I'm going to treat myself. Like that released. Isn't that weird? Anyone notice anything happening with their body when we talk about this stuff? Super curious.
I kind of do that thing you do, so we're just like, and the jaw immediately goes in, down, and I feel like all my teeth are being pressed in. Like it's awful. And then when you recognize it, acknowledge it, that's a release. And then I'm like, oh wait, hold on. I don't have to be sitting in this. What is wrong with me? But another thing I wanted to mention, and I also want to thank you, is recognizing the shadow work and knowing we got some shit to work on. And part of that also is tuning in and doing energy work around our business, protective work around our business and ourselves. which I didn't realize how much I actually am needing of that. So you kind of brought that to the forefront. And also part of that is I tend to be a pessimistic realist type of person. And it's visible to me that I need to start looking at the other side of the coin. What if I got love? What if I got community? The positive side of things, and calling those things in and manifesting those things, instead of focusing on the fear and calling in more fear with it. So I got work to do. Some candles to burn, some papers to write on.
Can we
Oh,
wonder if we could, I feel like it's maybe like, it's like alchemizing.
yeah.
If it's not work to do, what if it's magic to do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you doing, Amanda, if you're willing to share?
Sorry, I'm working on my phone. I'm good. I'm really good. Like, as I was like note taking and processing stuff, I was just like, yeah, just noticing from, I'm sorry, like just being on screen is a lot for me. Like, that's how,
Yeah.
yeah. But like sitting down and thinking and looking back at stuff, yeah, I can be hard on myself, but I am not anywhere where I used to be. So just like, yay for progress. That's where I'm at right now.
Oh, I'm so happy you're recognizing that. That's beautiful. Yay. Like I hope that through this it's clear to you, like anytime you show up at all, let alone authentically, is fucking courageous. Like trying is really brave. So I hope you all give yourself so much credit for that. Yeah. I'm curious, just to bring it home to marketing, does anyone have something they feel like they realized it's important for them to share in their marketing that they didn't realize would be really powerful to their people?
I found out that uh okay, so I've been talking about my grief a lot on social media, not so much the LinkedIn, but my real life. And it's leaked in a little bit to the LinkedIn stuff. And for a long time, I felt like, oh, this is overshare. Everybody thinks you're a weepy bitch. You need to shut up about this. But like, it's real and it's there. And part of the problem with grief is nobody talks about it. So I'm like, here I am talking about it. And I've had people, several, come up to me and like, thank me for showing up authentically in that space. And one of my friends told me she was inspired to go back to school and get her master's degree in art therapy and start grief working herself. And I was like, and you're welcome. I'm going to go cry on social media some more.
That
But
is huge.
it
Oh
is
my gosh.
huge. And it really was helpful to me to realize like, okay, I am making a difference. I felt like maybe I was, and I felt impelled to like tell people like this is okay to talk about. And it turned out there were people who were willing to share with me that they needed to hear that. And that was like a real nice little kick in the pants. It was good feedback to get.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so huge. And I'm curious, like, Kate, how do you think it would affect you if you're like really in the weeds with grief and you saw someone just give such a real share on LinkedIn about it? How would that make you feel, do you think?
I would definitely check and see what platform I was on. Like, oh, are we living here now? I didn't think we were actually living on LinkedIn, you know? But it is interesting. I am starting to see, especially my friends in like the social justice circles, they're dropping the facade. And it's God, I'm like, oh, thank God. We don't have to talk like this anymore. And maybe it means I don't get seen by recruiters. At this point, I care less because do I want to be seen by the recruiters who are going to make me mask in the workplace? No, I don't. And if my being honest on my LinkedIn weeds out those job opportunities, I've saved myself a lot of grief. Like, I don't want to work for you. You really don't want me in your workplace. You're right. And I don't want your workplace.
Yeah. And
So,
also, I just want to, when you described seeing people in your social justice networks being real on LinkedIn, like your whole body relaxed, like your shoulders dropped, like you just looked like all this tension was melting off of you. And like, what if you decided this is how other people are going to feel when they see my shares like this? Maybe even the recruiters, because they're people too. Like, what if you had that picture? Someone reading this is going to go, oh, thank God.
it would be a real gift to be that person to somebody else.
Right?
Well, I will have to say, my 9 to 5, I work for the School of Public Health for OHSU and PSU, and it's the academic side, but I work closely with the research, the dean of research. We do a lot of faculty hiring. I'm in a lot of those committee meetings and hiring meetings, and I have to say that we 100% always appreciate when someone shows up as their authentic self. If you bust out in tears, you overshare, we love that because we're looking for people who are committed to social justice, to really pushing through anti-racism initiatives, things of that nature. And that requires people showing up as themselves and being authentic. I don't want to hear the fluff. I don't want to see it. I don't want to feel it. So, Kate, I just thank you for showing up that way and keep showing up that way because there's people out here that need people like that.
Oh
And
God,
it's
that's
hard to
really good
find.
to
I'm
hear.
telling you, it is freaking hard to find because people immediately go to put that mask on and try and give us what they think we're looking for. And it's
Especially,
never,
absolutely, because that's what people have been told they need to do, especially
Mhm.
if they are not white, right?
Mhm.
Oh, it's exhausting.
Mhm.
It is exhausting.
So we're out here.
Yay! I'm so
And
glad to hear that. Thank you for sharing that.
You're
like
welcome.
the host just pointed out, your people aren't going to know that you're each other's people
Mhm.
unless you're vulnerable enough to be real about who you actually are, you know?
Absolutely. I think in my interview here, I actually broke down about my first racist encounter when I was like 6 years old, living in Canada as a little brown baby, surrounded by blonde hair, blue eye girls. That was my first introduction to like, what the hell is going on here? And I shared that in my interview. I was like, I need to tell you what racism means to me and how that feels to me. So yes, please keep showing up as yourself.
Yeah.
But I would also have to say, as far as the marketing, I realize that I can't just put copy out there and text and words. I have to show up with my face because I think people want to see it. And they need to know who's providing the service. And I just have this fear of this camera, like Amanda said. So I recognize I have to get over that. I have to, because people are gonna want to see who's gonna touch their head.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a big one, but I recognize I can't just put out text, messages on my Instagram and expect people to resonate with that. I actually have to put my voice out there. People have to feel it and hear it. So
Absolutely. And like
Mhm.
research has showed us the buying is literally never a rational decision. It's not logical. It's based on how we think it's going to make us feel. Is it a way we want to feel? I'm buying it. Is it a way I want to stop feeling and they know how to get me to stop feeling that? I'm buying it. So effective marketing is really emotional. It's really emotional. Yeah. Anything else anyone wants to share before I give you my little wrap-up spiel and let you all back into your day? Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for showing up and participating. This was such a healing experience for me. I'm so glad you are like, why are you shame? But anyway, while you're processing, so it sounds like this brought up some good stuff to sort through. If you wind up sharing anything, I would love for you to tag me. I want to see your shares, so I'm going to put that is my Instagram handle. And then this is my business handle on Facebook and Instagram. And you're all now on my email list and you should have my email. So feel free, if anything come up that you want to like process later, hit me up. I'd love to hear from you. And I would love also, if you really enjoyed today, let me drop a link if you want to leave me some stars on Google. One sec. Okay, so here's a link. You want to tell people why they should work with me. I would love that. And if you have any questions about Season of Sport or other ways I can help you out with your marketing, hit me up. All right. This was an absolute pleasure and absolute joy. I'm so grateful for all of you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for holding this space with me. I'm so pleased with this experience.
Same here. I don't know. Do you know Antha, Isa?
I do, yes.
Antha. So I was actually at a retreat, Temple of Belonging, this past weekend, and she asked me how my business was going. I was like, I just have to pull the plug and make an announcement that it's a thing. And she's like, what's stopping you? I'm like, I'm scared. And she's like, I'm going to email you a link. The timing of it was perfect. So thank you for being here, available, because the timing couldn't have been any better. So this is great.
I love Antha. She's great.
No, she's amazing.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, I love you all. Have a great rest of your day. Tag me, drop me some stars, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.